constantly, but I will add lip some.
Actually, could you introduce yourself again?
Yes, my name is Cathy Cavalier.
Wait, we're good. It started. Okay, thank you.
My name is Cathy Cavalier. I'm the president of Newtown Square Historical Society and sit on the Historic Commission as well. So basically, I was debating how to begin this since there were two presentations of an ordinance, one in 2005 and the one we just passed. I guess that was 2022 or 2021. So I thought the one I'm most familiar with, I'll start with, even though I have all the background on the current and the people are still there and did help with the second. It was not nearly the process that the first one was. So when I was appointed president, and that was probably in 2019, I think it was right before or during the pandemic. My goal was, I knew that there had been an ordinance, and my goal was to resurrect it, find it. It had been 15 years and never been presented again. And they did a lot of work, and I think they were disillusioned, to say the least. So the people, and some of them were still on the board, but still had no real motivation to carry it because of the occurrences at the time, and they were very political. It was a pretty devastating loss. So when I at least had this draft that they had presented, so this is what I started with.
And you're saying that was never enacted?
This was not, but
It
we
was
used
presented
it.
to Borough
Right.
Council. or
And I
whatever you-
represented it
Okay.
again. When I approached it a little differently. So basically, I decided the time, you have to look at the timing is right. We had rampant development in Newtown Square. You're probably familiar with the DuPont property and the Ellis School.
Preserve.
Yes. So the community was kind of outraged. So I knew that that would be on our side as well. They're knocking everything down, which they did take a lot of historic buildings down there. So that timing was right. Politically, the climate had changed somewhat. That's why I'm surprised that you didn't have one. Our political climate has been very much against preservation and very for the developer. And that's probably in part because we're a Class 2 township. And I think you're a Class 1.
I'm not sure, but I think you might be right.
Class 2 townships, the supervisors are elected at large, which means that one group over here can elect essentially 2 or 3 supervisors. They're not beholden to a certain constituency. Say Marple Township, will give as an example because I had lived there. They had commissioners, and each commissioner was responsible for their area, their precinct, their ward. So politically, you had a little more power because they want to be elected. So the first thing to do is find somebody, an official, who is supportive of history and wants to preserve. And I kind of found one pretty quickly, and he was young and up and coming. He grew up there, and so I knew he was going to be more attached to the land than some people who just moved there and want to climb. So that was the first thing, is to find somebody in the political place that would support you. Now, first time out, they thought they did, but in hindsight, knowing who this was and how things went, I could see where they didn't know that was gonna go down. But that, so that person I met with, and I had that ordinance so I'll go back to how they got to this, but I had this ordinance which I presented to him, which he then took, and in working off of that, there were substantial changes made. And that was pretty much from the get-go. It's very lengthy. You can read, when you read through it, and when I read through it, I kind of thought that this is not gonna go. This is gonna be a tough sell. There was just too many little details and things that you could pick apart that not even just developers, but homeowners, which is what they'll usually try to get you to be fearful, to sabotage or whatever. So they changed it around. They'll water it down. My own, by the way, my own society, aside from the people who didn't know anything about it, were not real happy that I was going forward and letting it be changed. But my feeling was,
Is this one?
Yes, my feeling was we need to get an ordinance and then we can amend it. And that is the way I know it can work, which we're already talking about doing as I speak because we see the problems with it. So, as far as getting the homeowners or the owners on board, that wasn't really difficult. I sent letters to 90. I should tell you, there's a survey or an inventory. Do you have a historic resource inventory? And you get one from the county?
Yes.
And you have your own?
Yeah.
That you add to, you have
The
that?
county
Yes.
prepared it for
Yes.
us. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we used, and I did the mailings. So I mailed everyone a letter saying that you've been designated historic resource and to be included in our new ordinance. And I set up 3 meetings, I left an email, and if you had any questions, so that was that first outreach. The meetings were held at one of our historic sites. I probably met a total of 10 people through that whole process. None objected. And if they did, it was about their sewer or something that was nothing to do with it, you know, will it upset the house? Will they put a sewer through? You know, it's those kinds of things. And other people were even miffed that they were ignored to begin with. They wanted to be part of it. So that being said, we moved on to the next phase, which was the Planning Commission. So the County Planning Commission, you have to present it there. I didn't have to, it was sent there through our solicitor. And they only made a recommendation to actually put something back in that we took out, the incentives. So they were actually very positive. Our own Planning Commission was a stumbling block. They were difficult. And the developers. So the developers did get a letter. On Ellis Preserve, there's several historic school buildings. So they were very upset because I think they didn't understand it. They didn't understand the ordinance, so they were fearful. Would we, special uses, can we not turn this into something, but keep it structurally intact? So actually we resolved that with them. There's probably another developer who actually we're gonna be in a fight with for the first building we're putting on there. That might have come forth. I didn't hear, a lot of things happen when you do this behind closed doors that you don't know. And then all of a sudden you're presented with this change. Are you gonna go for it or are you not gonna go for it? What are you gonna weigh the pros and cons of that? And a lot of things were taken out, all the incentives were gone. The biggest change, when it got down to it, was the demolition. That is what we wanted the most, that there could be a definitive, you cannot demolish. But in this ordinance, class 2 structures, it isn't the case. It's delayed, 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 options, options, options. In the end, they can demolish it. So that was not our preference. The class 1 structures, we have 5 on the National Register, so they are all included in this ordinance. But after the Planning Commission meeting, and they asked who made up the survey, who decided these were historic, all these kinds of questions, they pulled them all off. So none of them, except the 5 in the National Register, are in our ordinance. We are tasked now with having to put them all on.
The register.
Yeah, we have to make the Historic Commission.
When you met with, you said 10 property owners,
Yes,
how many in the whole inventory?
I'd say, I mailed 90 to 100, 90 letters.
So there's like 100 or so?
We have about 110 historic,
Okay.
and we added some. This book has a majority of them, but we added, over the years, the Ellis cottages and other buildings to it.
When was your main book issued? What date did your main book, you just mentioned you've added some since. What was the date of your main survey?
The date,
Yeah, right.
this would have been this one, was done in, when did they do this, 81, I believe.
Okay.
Or
okay.
84, 84. And I think they did them for all the municipalities.
We have something like.
I got the last one. I wanted a hard copy, that was not easy to get.
Right, okay, thank you.
A quick question about.
And unfortunately, I didn't have it at the meeting.
So a quick question about historic, because this is a conversation we're having, because there's what they certify as historic. I wish there were 2 words, honestly, because we always think if it's historic, the only way it can be considered historic is if somebody's certified that's historic, or it has some historic significance. But on the other hand, we're struggling with we feel that there's buildings in our town that we find significant because they're part of our town and they're part of the character of our town. We maybe identify them as historic, but I'm almost thinking that that conversation has to be, because I think the stumbling block like you came across, where they're telling you, well, the only way you can classify this as historic is if they're certified, so that's the only way that you can protect
Or
them.
on the register.
Or register.
Right.
For
Well, that's
the
the
total
certification,
protection,
yeah.
for the class two, which majority of them,
Certified.
you, the criteria is much broader, we have 10, and they only have to meet 1. For the class 1, they are 6, and they only have to meet 1. They are a little more difficult, that is the problem we're having right now. Many of ours classify as class 1. They're either 1690, 1720, and they're, yes. And then we have significant, like the Ellis Cottages, 1900s, the Grimm Elementary School, probably 1920, something like that. And they all qualify as a class 2 resource, so they can get put into the inventory, make it much more difficult to make changes to and have to get permits and all that. And the criteria does mention what you said, distinguishing characteristics of an architectural style, a person in your community who lived there.
Yeah.
That was important. It doesn't have to be, and it had to be 75 years.
Well, that's the
That's
thing.
different than the National Register.
Yes, the National Register is class 1. There's our 5 we have on there. And the problem is, we want to put, you can go about it 2 ways. You can say, let's protect them all because that's the one that protects you from demolition. Let's get them all class 1. But
Right.
then the stumbling block is I have to put the applications to the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission,
And they
which
take
meets
it
3
off
times a
the
year,
Right,
yes.
right. Well,
And it costs the township $800 to do the
Right.
process,
Depends
which they
on what
never
your
said
goals
either.
are. I mean, if you have a developer coming in that's really potentially going to, do a lot of change, chances are they may need like a permit from the Army Corps, or, which the National Register would mean that they would need to do 106, they might even need to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. So it provides some federal protection as well. So over time, it may be worth doing.
It is. I think it's gonna be easier to amend this. That's what my,
I see what you're saying,
that's
right.
what, I'm thinking we're gonna try to amend so that we can determine a class 1 based on the criteria that the state uses. But, and we can prove that this is, that it falls under that category. The only way you can stop demolition is at the local level. You have to have an ordinance that says no
Right,
demolition.
right.
If you don't, that's the only way you can do it. So that was our main goal, and that was my main goal, just to stop that. And the class 2, they're telling, oh, just apply for that in the meantime. Now, the homeowner can apply for that, or we can. It's just easier if I just write them all. So it's hard to get into all the politics that goes through this, because I found out later how much more difficult this is. Now it's gonna cost so much, you can't bundle them. I was told we could bundle 5 or 6 properties and push them through. Oh no, it's gonna cost a lot. Oh, and the supervisors aren't gonna vote that often. So then this is what they did to get us kind of on board. And I'm sure they knew this was gonna be difficult. That being said, Haverford included their historic buildings in their ordinance. Ours is unusual that it did it.
Okay.
You know, that was the big thing. So I think that is something you can get easily done if you have the resource inventory and don't pass it without them in there.
So how old is your resource inventory? That's a concern that I've had with our resource inventory, which is more than 20 years old.
I know.
81.
Yes,
This is even
84.
older, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
old.
still 40
And
years
it's
old.
And then we
It's still-
updated it when they applied in 2005, and they updated it and they added more, they've added over the years more.
But they went back and they re-inventoried the resources that are in the.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we have a map,
Just to
and that
think
map's
about
on there of all
what they
where
have.
they all are.
Yeah.
And yes, because they were, when I sent the letters and they didn't deliver them, I went and hand delivered them, some were not there, and some had been taken down, so.
Right. I mean, so much change can happen over that time, and
But
also criteria have changed.
getting a homeowner to buy in, I didn't think was as difficult. I think the obstacle is, from the first time they did it, would have been the developers. Developers, they checked campaign donations and found out who they were donating to. And that is what changed that vote at the last minute. So that was the first time. And I knew that wasn't gonna happen this time because they're a much more transparent group. And I had a good rapport with them, and I knew that they wanted they wanted to preserve because they're hearing it constantly about what's happened to Newtown Square. And everybody tells them that too, that drives by. So it's been a tough time for them. So the process, I guess after we met, we went around about it, the planning commission, and then the lawyers for the developer met with our solicitor. And then the final draft was done with the things removed, and the gentleman who drafted ours were not happy. And what I found was it was a stumbling block to going. I kind of just did it. And I know that they probably weren't happy. The rest weren't objecting at all. Everybody was just happy I was doing it. But I know that there were people unhappy. But I just kind of went along, and if they didn't overtly object, pushed it till it got to the vote. And I knew that it would get in. And even the gentleman, he's the chairman of the supervisors now, told me, you know, you have to be flexible and we'll amend, you know, we'll try to do that. And I think the amending, rather than do all this busy work, which is what's entailed in this, the Historic Commission being set up, and I think somebody quit right after the first meeting when they found out we had to put all these buildings into it and all the work that you had to do it. So my thought was, maybe amending it would be the way to go. We're gonna vote anyway, they're gonna go take it to a vote. Just one little sentence change would make a huge difference. So those are the things in ours. And the incentives, I wish we had incentives. There isn't, you know, any real incentives in ours, other than a plaque. You know, there's no tax breaks, there's no variances for B&B, which many of them wanted. And they wanted to be able to use the buildings in other ways. But they can apply and do that. The funny part, we still go back, I look at the wording on this, and I still have trouble understanding the interpretation. And many people do. We read a sentence one way, and then we're like, is that really what it means? So a developer came to us, to the Historic Commission, to propose the Ellis Cottage, one of those Ellis cottages. He wanted to put Ooh La La Salon in there.
Ooh la.
Ooh La La from Glen Mills. Anyway, so he came before us, and his write-up from a historic engineer or someone stated it's a class 2. He basically came before us assuming he was a class 2, because he met that criteria the Ellis cottages do. He didn't need to. We hadn't put that in yet. So my thinking is, I'm gonna revisit the language, and I'm thinking somebody else is looking at this and saying, wait, it says that you have an inventory already. I was looking all over it for where it said I have to add everyone, and there isn't one. So that's the next thing. Every week is something new with this, because it's brand new. And so, yes, he presented it, and he was very forthcoming and listened to every recommendation, and it went well. So that was surprising. The other problems that, I mean, I guess that would be the biggest one, is to have all your resources put on there from the get-go, and to make sure that all your politicians are on board before you ever take it to a vote.
Could you tell me who the official was that you were working with? I'm just curious.
Leonard Altieri. Oh, he will love his name being dropped, trust me.
Do you have buildings in your district that are determined to be non-contributing? That is, don't have the historic qualities, and you're not concerned about demolition?
Do we have them?
Do you have some of those? Yes. And are they identified in their?
No.
How does someone know, if you're a developer, that you've got a building that is non-contributing?
No,
Does that term not?
So you don't have a district?
we don't, no, the overlay is, what do you call that, where it's spread everywhere. It's a zoning, it is a zoning.
It's not the
Yeah,
same.
okay.
But it's
the whole community, or?
It's not a community, it's an overlay which extends through the whole township
Yeah.
with all the
Okay.
different spots in it. Of the-
Including, is there, remind me, where's,
Because I'm not
do
real
you have a
familiar with
historic commercial center?
No, no, it's all spread.
You've got-
I thought
Goshen
that,
Road and 252.
Right.
I
That's
thought
the
it was
square.
that, I thought there was that little circle,
Whoa.
But no
Can you
historic
show us a
buildings.
map, like, I know,
He's good.
I got it right now.
with your overlay, like,
How
So
does
what does
it-
that look
So
like?
that's what you did, you came up with a,
Well, it's not real clear,
Yeah, so that's a good example.
yes.
Is that in your
And it's,
packet?
and it's also on, I don't know if it's on there, but it's also on our township site.
okay.
I kind of thought that this was a little more historic, maybe it's just post-war development,
It is.
that little circle there behind the
It's
fish
post-war, but
market.
there's some earlier than that.
Yeah. So,
That's in our map.
Alright, so this is
The St. Albans
Oh.
Church probably is one of the early ones.
the properties.
That would be on some Newtown Square website, right?
It's on our township website and on
Yeah,
the Historic
okay.
Society
So-
website.
That might be-
And, I'm sorry, I think
Here, we'll
I
come
had
back
so
to
many
that.
papers here.
Yeah.
Like, I brought, this was the criteria for that. And here's,
so how far does
An
Newtown
inventory.
Square extend really? Does it go all the way past Dunwoody Village to the east? Or, I mean, how's,
yes, it goes all the way down to Media Line Road
oh,
toward the east.
okay,
And then the other direction to Media, 252, Willistown, to the
okay.
west, Radnor. We tip
Wow, it's really
Radnor
big.
on.
So it goes,
It's huge. Yeah, we're just looking at this little area of the center, at the crossroads there, but,
So the majority of this list are buildings in the 1700s.
We have a lot.
See, this is the thing, is
Right?
we have a certain, our buildings are almost more contemporary.
They certainly are.
In
There's-
comparison.
There's like
Because-
5 in the 1900s here.
I mean, Swarthmore College wasn't established
What are we-
until what,
what are we-
1860s?
60s, yeah.
64.
We have a lot in the
1864,
1850s.
right.
Yeah.
The one we're trying to save
There
is
was a
Wow.
couple of, I
1850.
think that oldest
I
house is
think
the
we
one on
only
Park,
have
right, with the
two.
little sunset.
And the Grange was old, but that's gone. And then there's an old stone house up there on Swarthmore Avenue, up by the mall.
The old-
Are you
But you have a
talking
lot of
about the Ogden
architectural,
one?
Yes,
You're talking
Right.
about our, yeah,
beautiful
we
Yeah.
only
buildings.
have two on
Well,
this.
that's the
Where?
thing, we do have a
Yeah.
lot of.
And I
we
think
have a
there-
lot of
that-
beautiful buildings.
that
But like
stone,
this is the thing I struggle with is that.
That stone
if you-
structure that the roof was off for a long time,
If
as you
it's
go up.
certified,
yeah,
that they
the old
have
milk, the
That-
old,
Yeah, that I think is
Spring-
connected
the spring
to-
house was part of
The
that.
spring house was
Yeah.
part of that property.
Yeah.
Contribute to our town or look at it as a group, because if we have to go one by one, I think that's,
That's what they've done.
so
They've
that's like the
identified
National Register.
you know,
Yeah.
that
They
it
can
could,
help you understand.
it could backfire on us, it'd be hard, but if we, you know,
That's-
maybe if we
But the
identify
uses-
buildings and that it's a conditional use, say, you know, to give ourselves an opportunity to review and work on, you know, that kind of a thing, so it's not a,
Not used in that.
like an open car, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, I'm sure you'll find something on these that
Yeah,
would,
and this-
would
and this
tell
is-
you, this is the commercial, it could be a commercial park.
I wanna
It,
take a
it
picture
has
of this.
a lot of different, that one is much more broad.
I
I
think
think we're definitely a collective in Swarthmore.
Yeah.
Like what makes us a character is the collective variety
Exactly,
yeah,
right,
Right, it's, there's,
of buildings and styles and parks and
yeah, it's not, right, it's not one thing, and then
Yeah.
the thing is, this almost encourages, it kind of pushes identifying
Yeah,
singularities, which is
right,
not,
No.
individually, there's no strength to them, really. We have to look at it, I
Right,
think,
you
is
might have that.
collectively, that's what's gonna give us our.
right,
and that is kind of our character.
I mean,
Yeah.
the other
It's
part of
also
that
not,
is
I mean, the context or the theme for what we're looking at is 20th century development, that's what
Right,
it is.
right.
Suburban development, you're looking at something really different.
Yeah.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've added, More
If you-
recent
if you did
buildings
these
to it.
If you identified an area of significance, which is one of the big things you need to do, coming to the table, thinking about historic preservation, it wouldn't be 20th century suburban development.
It's raw.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
'cause you've got
Which is what
the,
we are looking at, so that's equally as valid.
Right, yeah, no, we're glad, see, this, the thing is,
Enlightening.
I'm glad you're talking to us about this, because this is what we're struggling with, this idea of what is historic and how are we going to interpret it for what we have here, right? Did you wanna say
me-
something?
No, I
Oh,
was
I'm
gonna
sorry,
say,
John, go
I
ahead.
mean,
it's about the collective whole of a variety of things. We don't have any famous architect buildings, I don't think.
Yeah, I think
Um,
we do, but I
We,
can't
we have
name
a
them
few
right now.
old houses that are sprinkled, pardon me?
Oh, the park, no, that's.
Is that-
I
Excuse
don't
me,
Someday,
excuse me, yes.
Yeah.
50 more
I-
years.
My apologies to the team.
But
But there's,
really,
it's not about many individual things as much as the collective whole of the small scale
Fabric.
20th century fabric.
We have a
and-
lot of sort of little, all these little They were subdivided and developed at basically the same time.
Yeah.
And there may be a lot still left within a little district. There's gonna be some new buildings sprinkled
Yeah.
in there.
But the Michaels
Yeah.
block, which is a sort of a V-shaped development
Right.
with the.
With all the little tutors.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
faces, that's probably the most coherent, single-style, identifiable group of, it's a really one giant structure that's like a big giant V shape.
Yeah,
That's clearly one
Right.
thing,
Clearly identifiable.
right? And that to me, I always compare it to like Long Island Railroad goes out to Long Island, and there's whole towns that were developed by the railroads, like Pennsylvania Railroad did along the main line, that have a whole character of like one style.
Right.
And that's our one style, is that Tudor-looking Michaels block that does that. But that doesn't mean anything else is bad or different. They're just a little bit
Okay.
newer. Yeah.
And if you think about it, the historic, I was gonna say that I think one of the things that you've pointed out is, the importance of having some kind of recognizable criteria that
Yes.
you are identifying, where you're identifying and saying, yes, this is historic and here are the reasons why. And so it doesn't appear as though it's just one person going in and saying, this is historic.
Right, right.
Yes, I like the way that looks. But to the, thinking about the cohesiveness of the whole, there's a couple different ways you're encouraged to look at places. One is building, sites, structures, objects, districts, there's districts
Yeah.
versus looking at something individually.
Mhm.
So you actually document them that way. A district would have, like what we have, a whole collection of buildings that aren't necessarily on their own historically significant, but together as a whole, they hang together and create something meaningful and historically significant.
And if you lose too many of them, you have a smile without enough teeth.
I was gonna get to that, is we need to find that balance where, where is the breaking point where suddenly what we characterize as Swarthmore is it's changed by the number or which buildings, if we lose those, do we really lose something that's uniquely identifiable? So that, I think, is finding that balance between what we think buildings we could sacrifice or with buildings that we really think need to be preserved because they're kind of like how we identify, like you said, that block for me is Swarthmore. Michael's, when they sold that building, we left the Michael's sign because everybody identified with it, it's that kind of thing,
Right.
So I think that we can come to a consensus.
Just on that block.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just using it as an example.
As one.
We should, I think, look at the whole business district and see,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
see, and you know what I think is super important is the edges of our business district with the residential, and I think we could see that also in Arbor. It's where the business starts to into the residential. That transition, I think, is very important. We have
Right.
to treat
And
that
it's not
as
necessarily right at a certain street, so the block ends and the next one is it. Some of those were interspersed. And you saw
Exactly.
some homes and
Right.
some apartment buildings.
And if you look at our edges, we've got a lot of slice and dice mansions that are now apartments.
right.
They sort of make up a lot of that edge.
Oh, you have a nice town center, you have a little town center, not on a main road.
Right.
Right. Yeah, we don't, we are sprawl, we are up the middle with Westchester Pike and down the side with 252.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, that's what
they're-
I kind of thought that circle was when
They're trying,
when
we
I
have a
discovered
group
that.
gather in the circle and they're
Yeah.
revitalizing St. Albans Circle. And the
Yeah.
whole point is to bring recognition, and we hold events there, we do a lot because the dueling town center that would never materialize that this builder thought he was gonna build, which you can't build someone's town center, it is where it is. And so that, the concern was that was going to somehow change the town. And it hasn't, because I don't even know what that is, I mean, nobody goes in there who doesn't live there. It's, the only good thing they did was build some trails. But,
In your, in the ordinance, it talks about what the historic resources are. It also talks about the historic setting and the landscape features too.
Right.
So how have people responded to that, the more intangible qualities that are
How
actually
do they-
identified?
Well, they responded positively to the one that was passed. you're
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, cause I think that's something that
We
we haven't
included
really
that,
talked
yeah.
detail about here, that it's.
Was it
part
like
of
a park?
And
A
the
park?
setbacks, there was all this
The
talk
wood,
of
the street,
all
kind
that,
of
the
thing.
land
Yeah,
surrounding,
plants,
yes,
tree
because
lines,
Newtown
that
has so
goes-
Because
much
if you
land.
start
It's very-
changing that and
Very descriptive.
sacrificing
They have a
that,
lot of it out there.
Yeah.
Other things.
Well, this
fall
whole
apart,
area
too.
up here.
Oh, they
You can
do.
spend
All the greenery
this
that's
time
being
like
frittered
preserving
away.
that,
Oh,
Michael's
there's
and
the,
all of
school.
those buildings, and if you
Yeah.
started,
And the
making
covered bridge,
sidewalks
there's a covered
smaller,
bridge here
or-
in Goshen Road.
changing something on the other side and saying,
I know,
we can
it's a
just
fabric.
sacrifice that, yeah.
It is, well, that's the balance, right? That's what we're gonna have to,
We have to
Yeah.
really look at that.
Look
and
at
take
that,
into
yeah.
consideration the character of the landscape setting, not the greenery, but
yeah,
the scale, the spatial organization.
It makes a
All
big
of that is really
difference.
important.
I think I read that the Ellis Preserve is now, the building, their last possible building. Is that true, or is there still gonna be more infill on that?
The last possible, the one up near the pike is
Yeah.
the
The big-
state-of-the-art, some corporate center,
Yeah,
built with all reclaimed wood and all these other things
Yeah.
that they're doing. That will be the last, and I think there's a motel or hotel going.
yeah, the
next.
hotel up on, State, up on.
Another hotel, yeah.
Yeah.
They built one.
Yeah.
They had to alter that because they started, during the first crash. And then, then the COVID hit, and it was, brick and mortar stores were not wanting to come in. So it's mostly eateries, and they added more residential because of that change. So they had to kind of, and our water system hasn't been able to handle it, so it's a mess.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the circle that's on the northeast part is that it's trying to become some sort of town center like
Yes.
that. Whereas the whole food side of the world, that whole new thing, is just a bunch of stuff that's plopped
Yes,
in the middle of a parking
Yeah,
lot.
Yeah,
You know,
oh, yes, no, I.
we all
yes,
say that,
exactly
yes,
what
that
is.
side of 252
Yeah.
is not really
Whole
Newtown, so
Foods.
we don't know where that is, but
Yeah.
you can't even get
King of
across
Prussia.
there.
It's a King of Prussia.
I know, it's so sad.
Yeah,
But yes, the St. Albans is really the place, and actually the manager would like, if he had his way, would
St. Albans is a
alter
church
the
right there.
design of the stores that are on the pike to open the other direction. He had his wish list, that would be so that
That would be it.
there would be a walkable
oh, you
town
mean
on the
so,
one side.
like Rite Aid and everything would,
Open that
Open
in,
to the
yes,
north.
where there's space and it's a shame.
So let me get back to
Cars
this
rule.
ordinance. So I guess for me, a little bit of the takeaway is that it's important to get an ordinance in place, that it may not be perfect.
Right.
But that and then we could amend it, or it would be a living,
living
a living document.
It is a
Right.
living document.
Right, right.
But the key is to get our inventory in and
Yes.
costly incentives.
So maybe we need to look at, I have to go look, or we should look back at the book that has, because I don't know how much of that listed all of the things that are,
It doesn't.
In-
I think
in
there's
the-
holes in it.
yeah, in the town center.
Right.
So as our focus is the town center, maybe we need to go look at that and then compare it to what we have here
Right.
currently, and the edges.
And probably do what we said, try to judge what we think is.
Well, maybe what we do is we photograph, we document, we do all that, then we come for our charrette, right?
Right.
And then we'll have the plan, maybe we put pictures up of all the different things, I was thinking we tape it up on that wall, that type of thing, and we can start having a discussion about, because we could look at least at the edges, we could look, then we can look at areas like we were saying, the Tudors and they turned the corner, and Michael's, that area along the train tracks right now, where the co-ops, loading dock is. We can look at, the little round bank and this area here. So it's interesting because each part of this has very different type of issues that we're dealing with, right? So I think that'll be, we can start with the bigger picture, identifying all these different districts, right? And then maybe looking at the individual buildings in those districts, and then figuring out, and then we can recommend, well, where do we think development might be best? If we do want development, maybe it's along the train tracks, there's those little one-story I know we would displace some people, so we have to consider that, cause that's an affordable place for
It's affordable.
people that I know.
You can't separate it out. We're
Yeah,
not gonna-
so, but that would be part of the conversation too.
I mean, they're part of the community too, so.
No,
Just
no, I'm
come
not
to the
saying we
table.
would,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that we could add, more dense, cause they're only those little one-story and still accommodate.
You're talking about the old, looks like a motel, but
It
it's,
does.
Yes.
but it's really, they were
So,
stalls or
if you
something.
go, you know where
Behind
Hobbs
Ship
is,
Bottom?
if you
Park-
go around,
garage.
Behind Ship Bottom.
yeah, behind Ship Bottom,
Yeah.
that little area in there.
Yeah, there used to be
Again,
old
we
garages.
don't have to have,
Yeah, we don't
Those
need to
is
get-
garden.
get into it, but
Right.
that would be a time to take, and maybe it's over 2 meetings or something, start to look at those little areas in depth, right?
Just out of curiosity, how do we deal with the college? I mean, or do we not deal with
I
the
was
college?
not gonna, I was gonna
Do
keep
you
the
just
town.
keep that?
I thought
The
we're just
college-
focusing on town center.
Yeah, we're only
Well,
doing.
no, I
Right.
know, but you know, it's,
Well,
Do they own
it's a
anything?
presence.
They own the
Yeah,
big
but
administration
101.
building,
No.
101.
Well, I mean.
That
do we
modern
make a
is
That's
law?
right,
building.
that's right. Well,
They
we
own
should-
101
we
now.
should tell them.
Well, there's
They
an
own-
eligible
Yeah,
historic
do
district
something.
at the college.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
but the college
Well,
owns
that's
from
fine.
the
But if
I'm
we're-
just asking the
Yeah,
question,
yeah.
cause it's.
well, I think
it's-
I think it,
maybe
this,
the larger picture that we've, but if we're
I mean, that
talking
could
outside
be,
town
I
center.
could, that could be year 2 or year 3.
yeah, right. I think involving the college right now would
Well, I'm not
probably
saying
be a
involved, I'm just
mistake.
saying,
But
you know, how do you
wouldn't you,
consider it?
wouldn't we be, just like you did, went out and told people what you were doing? We would wanna do that too?
And
Well,
get their
the college
input,
would be told, I
You
mean,
get
we should
their
let them know if
opinions.
they're, not only.
and then you
Well-
can take them or not.
One,
But
one
you
could
can-
argue that the work of the inn, creating another edge,
It
Right.
did, that's true.
is helpful to the business district and to
Yeah.
the, sort of how it's, creates a wall there on that side.
Well,
But
they
it's
also
the
have
train
office buildings
station.
that-
Wait, I'm sorry.
Well, they
Well,
have
one
a
on one,
in front of the
one on
post office, they have that,
Yeah, just
Yeah.
that,
that,
the
yeah.
administrative.
Because the
So it's
college
right
has
there.
space in it.
Well,
rent space.
how
They
about we
rent
do
space.
this in steps, because we only have a
Because I
month.
think that also
I
feathers
think,
in.
because I would like to, listening to your presentation, at some point, it would be nice to address all the different residential housing we have here, because there are
Right.
some amazing, the same sort of thing, but that's like a whole other.
I thought we identified that as year 2.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
we're gonna do that year too, so I'm saying,
Yeah.
the college aspect, we can let like our little article in the Swarthmore, and
Yeah,
let
just
people know
let
that we're
people know that
doing
way.
this, yeah.
But make sure the college knows.
Yeah,
We wouldn't
yeah.
keep them out of it.
Yeah,
I
but
think-
we're
I
not keeping
mean-
anybody out of it in the
Right.
sense that,
We're
we
just
have to
not-
narrow our focus.
we're just talking
We're not
about town
talking
center.
about
Right,
documenting
right.
and
Right, well, they would be,
Well, no, you
know,
would
like
get
other people
consent
would
to go on
know
the
we're on the
property.
edge.
But that college might be part of the when we address the other residential, they
Right.
have,
Right,
they
right.
have those
Yeah.
residential dormitories on Harvard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
That are
Harvard,
really
right.
interesting, the ones that are,
The
right.
sto-
What
the
the
stone
two that
ones.
burned down.
Your idea of the photographs is a very good one, actually. And we did storyboards and photographs, and we, in the Paper Mill House Museum on St. David's Road. The Paper, that's our headquarters, it's a converted mill. The way it looked is mill house, not a mill, actually, it's where the workers live. But the whole upstairs is all done with storyboards, photographs, information about each historic place. I think they put almost all of them on there. And as new ones come up, we had the Dunwoody on there, the history of it, the pictures of it. But as new buildings come up, like the Ellis Cottage, the Alice Graham Elementary, they're not old, but they're important to the community. They were made and added, but they were added by making these photographs, making the distinction, writing it up, and then just submitting it. And we created the list and put it on our website. And if you do it, and they see it enough, it becomes the inventory. And a lot of them I know were not in this book. That, and so, but they're
Right, so
assumed
you're
now.
actually double,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
making your work count
Okay,
twice.
you mentioned that you have submitted more buildings since.
Oh,
since
then
the
that is
public-
in here,
yeah,
yes.
Right, that are now part of your, I guess, official book or, whatever.
Yes,
you
they're
call
on
it.
our website, that's,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
and we designated those.
Right, and maybe, I don't know if anybody else did in the 40-year period, aside from your historic commission. But anyway, that book,
It was that,
if
they
that was
started in
published
eighty at the
this
same
year,
time, yeah.
yeah, it would be bigger right now.
It would be bigger, not huge, but yes,
Yeah,
it would be
right,
much bigger.
right.
And as I go around, I see more, so,
Oh,
as
sure,
you say,
sure.
they're not all old buildings, but they mean something to the community.
Right,
And you get a lot of support from people when they see, oh, what are they gonna do with that? I
right.
mean, there's clusters at the top of Westchester Pike that Claude Dupatin, who's the huge developer here.
Yes.
You all know, he
Yeah,
owns a lot
yes,
of
we
Newtown
know.
Square and probably other places.
Yeah.
And that corner, there's an old place that we submitted to, that he's gonna fight, that's called the Horace Lewis House. It's an 1885 house that sits there. But on the corner of those houses, the one, it's in all our old photographs, it's probably from 1901, definitely over 75 years. And my feeling is, I'm gonna apply for all of them that qualify, for over that period, that qualify within our ordinance, because why not? You know, what's the most that's gonna happen? He's gonna have to fight them all? And he's gonna come.
So he's still alive, cause Swarthmore had a
Well,
huge
I don't
fight
know.
with him. Oh, okay,
It's his,
Yeah, he is, he's still around.
okay,
he's around, but
Yeah.
his lawyers are the ones who will come
Yeah.
to
right,
fight.
there's a whole,
They already want to
if you
demolish.
do legal
so.
research, under there's a whole section.
Oh, yeah.
They want
Yes,
a river view.
it's almost like,
Oh, my God.
well, that was our fight in Swarthmore, but I'm saying he has been so litigious that if you go and start searching in this area, you can make a whole like little division of DuPont. I mean, there are a lot of cases under his name.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
all.
oh, yeah, everybody knows that one.
Yeah.
All right, I wanna
So-
be mindful of the time, we are
Yeah.
doing good, we are doing well. And,
I'm good.
you're good with your presentation?
Yes,
Okay,
so you
okay.
guys can carry on. I will leave you this.
Does anybody have any other
give anything
questions?
back?
No, this was really interesting.
No,
Yeah,
you
this
keep
is
it.
really
This was,
helpful.
I'm not sure
Thank
who
you so
created that, but that's kind of interesting too. I found that,
Yeah.
copied as much as I could.
Thank you.
But, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
You're a very
Does
good,
this belong
motivated
to your-
group.
Oh, yeah, here.
And then-
Oh, wait,
Just
sorry.
a quick question though.
This is part of yours.
That goes in here. You guys can keep
Okay.
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
that'll-
you.
Oh, great. So
And-
this process, how long
And
did
we
this
can keep
process
this too, right?
take you?
You can keep that. I have a
Okay,
ton
thank
of
you.
these.
2005 until,
Well, no, it was tabled. So
Yeah.
and that
And
was
then when-
my
when did you
frustration.
pick it up?
How did you leave it?
2019?
I guess when I became chairman was, yeah,
So just
2019.
about 3 or 4 years.
Because I met the guy during
2
the-
years,
during
19 to
the
21.
pandemic.
Oh, okay. Is
Right?
that the period of time?
2
Okay.
years.
Oh, good.
2 years. And actually, that was, it could have gone faster. It was just a couple things had come up.
That's
There's a lot of bureaucracy involved, so.
Thank
Good
you so
luck.
much. Thanks for
Right.
coming.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.